Lovely, thank you for coming, and sorry about the change of venue. It's a little bit stressful today.
Not your fault.
Not my fault, no. So, interesting subject today, all about our guts, tummies, stomachs, whatever you want to call it. Digestive system, generally, really. Now, many of us will suffer with tummy problems in our life. Some of us will always suffer with tummy problems. Some of us, they say about 40% of people are suffering with some sort of stomach issue at any time in their life. So that's a really high number.
Are you saying they're aware of that, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily aware of it, you know, but they live with it because they think that it's normal and that's what life is like, and I don't think it should be. The sad thing as well is more and more young people are suffering with tummy problems. I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and her daughter, who is 11, maybe 12, has just been diagnosed with IBS. And I think a lot of it is to do with lifestyle and stress and pressure and everything else that's put on children nowadays. And it's sad, and it doesn't have to be like that. So the purpose of today really is to give you a bit of an insight into why it's important to listen to your gut, to talk about your second brain and explain what that means, and why listening to your gut is actually something that is true. It's a saying we all hear, but listening to your gut is actually telling you something that's going on in your body. Now, I won't have enough time to go into really loads and loads of detail, so if you've got questions, ask them at the end or ask them during, that's absolutely fine. If I can answer them, I will. I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a naturopath, but obviously I have experience and knowledge in this field, but I can also put you in touch with people that can help you if you need that help. I'm going to give you a 6-step guide, and I've got your handouts have got the guide there, so you can take that away and have a look at it. Just to give you some hints and tips about things that you can do to help improve your digestive health, and how that will also affect your overall health, vitality and well-being.
Have you got any more handouts?
I have, Jan. Yes, this one here. Can I pass that? Thank you. Lovely. So, firstly, let me talk about our second brain. So, the ENS, or the enteric nervous system, sits within our gut. And there are over 100 million nerve cells in our GI, our gastrointestinal tract. So they start in your mouth and they come out the other end. That is almost identical to the number of nerve cells that you find in your spinal column. So that's why it's known as our second brain. And if we didn't have these nerves in our stomach and they were in our spinal cords would be huge, and we'd all be much, much bigger. Now, the enteric nervous system has a relationship with our central nervous system. So our central nervous system is everything else. So it's our breathing, it's our sleeping, it's our feelings, it's the whole thing. This is where it gets a little bit complicated, so I'll try not to go too quickly. So within the central nervous system, you have sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is our flight and fight. You've all heard about that. That's where our stress hormones, our adrenal glands kick in. You're being chased by somebody with a big knife. That's when that kicks in and you run, or you hide, or you fight, whatever, one of those. The parasympathetic nervous system deals with our rest and digest. So that manages our digestive system. Now, both can work at the same time, and ideally we want them to work at a similar level, but what tends to happen is they get out of sync. Now, obviously, if you're being chased by somebody with a big knife, then your sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in and it's going to be up here, and the parasympathetic will stop. That's why when you run away from something, you have this horrible feeling in your tummy, because all the blood goes away, all the hormones kick in, and they make your digestive system stops. Now, they're part of the autonomic nervous system, which is completely out of our control. So you are all sitting here digesting as we talk. You are sitting here breathing, your heart is beating, but you are not consciously thinking, I need to breathe, I need to breathe, I need my heart to beat. It's out of our control, completely out of our control. And that's why the enteric nervous system it's important to understand it is part of your second brain, because it's out of our control. So all of these external factors can have an impact on the enteric nervous system, the central nervous system, and affect your health and vitality. When we're chronically stressed, the sympathetic nervous system is working 110%. And the sympathetic nervous system has an impact on something called our limbic system. I know there's lots and lots of different systems here that we're talking about. It gets a bit confusing. But the limbic system is linked to our hypothalamus and our thalamus in our brain. And the hypothalamus is responsible for our thyroid gland, our ovaries, our testes, our adrenal glands, and all those glands. So hopefully you can start to see having a problem here can have an impact on your thyroid, can trigger things such as adrenal fatigue, which is quite a big buzzword in the press at the moment, but all of it can have an impact if we don't keep it in sync with all of these other things. Hypothyroidism is one of the biggest things that we hear about nowadays, and I, hand on heart, pretty much I would say 90% of females especially that come to see me are on thyroxine or have had thyroid tests. Now, I could talk about thyroid. It's probably a subject for another talk. Personally, I think that the doctors like to test thyroid all the time and just want to put people on thyroxine. There might be a little link with a pharmaceutical company going on there, but you can deal with thyroid issues in other ways. You don't have to just go on thyroxine. So when the limbic system is irritated by the sympathetic nervous system, i.e. stress, that is an emotional sensory system. So it sends lots of messages to our body. Have I confused you all, or are you all still with me? Kind of. So,
If I'm honest, so.
autonomic nervous system is completely out of our conscious control. So breathing, digestion, heartbeat, la la la. In the autonomic nervous system, you have sympathetic, which is fight and flight, parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. Enteric nervous system sits within our gut. Doesn't have anything to do with the spinal cord. Central nervous system is our brain and our spinal cord. And the ENS talks to the CNS. The limbic system is our emotional sensory system that is linked to things like thyroid, adrenal glands, testes, ovaries, etc., etc. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. It does get a bit complicated. Now, the other thing to remember is that our GI tract, from our mouth to the other end, has 2/3 of the cells that are responsible for our immune system. 2/3. That's a lot of our immune system. So if there's a problem here or anywhere along here, that's when our immune system is going to start struggling and having a problem. So that's when we get the autoimmune diseases, like thyroid problems and things like that. So that's why it's really important to think about your tummy and what it's telling you. And, are you bloated and gassy? Are you suffering with constipation? Do you have IBS? Diverticulitis? All of those sort of things, Crohn's disease, autoimmune disease, things like that. So it is really important to think about the immune system as well. Now, once some of these things start to go, it's almost like dominoes. When you line up a line of dominoes, you get one that has a knock-on effect, that has a knock-on effect, that has a knock-on effect, and they start to go down. So you're going to get things like gas and bloating, reflux, heartburn, abnormal hunger, so you're hungry all the time, or the opposite, which is one that we don't think about, is no hunger. Not hungry, don't feel hungry, don't want to have anything to eat, and you can go for all day, not hungry, not hungry. That's not normal for a human body to feel not hungry. Or feeling full as soon as you've had a mouthful of food, or that feeling you can get sometimes when you've had a meal and sort of 20 to 30 minutes afterwards, you have that sort of bloating, waterlogged feeling. Everything just feels like that. It's the only way I can describe it, really. You know, your tummy feels big, that waterlogged feeling. You're constipated, or perhaps you're going a bit more regularly. Perhaps you have no control over when you need to go. Sensory issues, things like being affected by bright lights, or having to wear sunglasses every time you go out, even in the winter. Having problems with your skin, you know, perhaps you've always worn the same jewellery, the same watch, the same earrings, the same necklace, and all of a sudden, you know, it's starting to, you get itchy problems. You put it down to the fact that, oh, perhaps the metal's worn off. They're all little signs that maybe there's something that's going on with your digestive health. They are the dominoes that are falling down. So what I'm trying to say is to be aware of how you're feeling. And as Carrie said at the beginning, people don't necessarily know that they're struggling with problems. So those sort of things, if they're happening all the time, think about it. Write it down. Remember. Think, do you know, I felt icky for a long time now. You shouldn't have to. You should be able to feel happy and comfortable. Eczema, psoriasis, all that sort of things. So I'm going to give you 4 things that you can look at. 2 of which I probably guess you would think about anyway. 2 of which maybe you haven't thought about. So the first one is movement or activity. How much do you move? If you sit at a desk all day, or if you have an inactive lifestyle, you're probably doing maybe between 2,000 and 5,000 steps a day. I'm not saying you have to do 10,000 steps a day, but I'm saying as a human being, we are designed to move. That's why we've got 2 legs and we haven't got a very large bottom and very short legs. We're not designed to sit down on our bottom all the time. I watched a programme, I think it was last night, where they were saying that 65% of office workers do not leave their desk at all, apart from to go to the toilet, all day. So they get to their desk maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock at night. Some people don't get up at all. They say they're too busy to go and get lunch. There's too much work to do. And this is part of the problem, I think, is that there is so much pressure on everybody nowadays to do more. You know, productivity levels have got to be high. We need to move. So you need to be conscious of what you're doing. It's really easy, isn't it? We've all done it. To sit.
Salmon.
Well, let the food come in.
The salad, chicken salad, and one more. Thank you.
You know, when you get carried away, don't you? You've got emails to do, or you need to write something, and you sit there, or you end up surfing on Facebook and things like that. Next thing you know, an hour and a half's gone. It's so easy to do. So just be conscious of how much are you moving, or maybe try and make it a habit that every morning you get up and you go for a walk. You go out and enjoy the sunshine. You'll feel so much better if you go out and get that fresh air. It doesn't have to be for long. It can be 10 minutes. It could be just walk up the road and back down again. But think about moving your body. Even if you're sitting at your desk and you just have a stretch, you get your arms moving, or you get up and walk around your desk.
Pesto soup, vegetarian soup.
Vegetable soup, yeah.
Vegetable.
Thank you.
French onion soup.
Thank you.
So that's
One
your
more time, that's it.
It's okay. So that's your first M, movement. Think about movement, and that's something that we probably don't consciously think about. The second M is mindset or mindfulness. Now I know mindfulness is it's a bit of a buzzword out there. Everybody's talking about be mindful how you eat, be mindful of how you're feeling. But actually, it is important. It is about being aware. So be aware. Are you sitting here listening to me, but your mind is also chattering away going, I've got to do this later, I've got to do that later, must write this email, must talk to that person, must ring my mum, must walk the dog, la 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 la, and it's chatter. Or are you feeling in your tummy a bit anxious, a bit worried, a bit nervous about, could be anything, about stuff that you've got to do? Do you feel, do you feel churned up inside? And if you feel churned up, that's definitely the limbic system and the enteric nervous system talking to you. So how do you deal with mindset, mindfulness and things like that? Well, it is to think about relaxing activities, and that links to movement, because going for a walk in a beautiful sunny day or on a beach or in the woods or whatever will do both of those. It's going to relax you, it's going to calm you, it's going to send that chattering away. Meditation, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, sleep, having a bath, having sex. Orgasms are supposed to be very good for mindset, mindfulness. Sorry, you're all starting to eat your food now. But that's an important part, and it's balancing that seesaw, that sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Your fight or flight hormones kicked in. You need to calm them down, bring that seesaw back up, get that parasympathetic, that rest and digest system going. Third M is metabolics. Exercise, structured exercise. Best type of structured exercise, short, resistance training, so circuit training, weight training, high intensity training, metabolic effect that we do. 2 or 3 times a week. Doesn't have to be every day. 2 or 3 times a week, between 15 and 30 minutes. Don't need to go much more than that, because if the intensity is right, you won't be able to go for much longer than that. You can do an hour in the gym, it's absolutely fine, but your intensity will be less the longer you do. But structured exercise. So this isn't movement. Movement is movement, activity. This is structured exercise. And then the final M is meals or nutrition. So think about, what do you eat? When do you eat? Why do you eat? How do you feel when you eat? Are you having lots of vegetables, lots of lean protein, good carbohydrates, fresh prepared food that you're preparing yourself? So the better you get your nutrition, the better your stomach is going to deal with things. Other things on top of the 4 M's, things like sleep, hydration, rest and relaxation. They're all very important. And the talk that Kirsty gave last time about sleep, obviously we talked about sleep. The video's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it and you want to see it, then go and have a look. So what do you do when you have digestive problems? I will talk about some specific digestive problems once you've finished your dinner. But there are six things that I would recommend that you look at. So think about your 4 M's, they're important, that helps you to get some balance. But guidelines for some solutions. First one is food. What you put into your mouth will have an impact on your body in whatever way. There's a lot of information in the press about intolerance, people being allergic, lactose intolerance, gluten intolerance, things like that. And I think, personally, they've taken it too far. And it's almost like, you can't eat gluten, you can't eat wheat, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, We're all unique, as I keep saying. We are unique, we have unique metabolisms, we have unique personalities. So you have to find out what works for you. If eating cheese and bread and butter works for you, you are happy with your weight, you're happy with how it makes you feel, eat it. It's not about, can't have that because it's bad, I can't have this because it's bad. It's about finding what works for you. But there are some common culprits out there that can have an impact on our digestive system, and they are gluten, sugar, alcohol, whey, soy, dairy, artificial sweeteners. Those are probably the most common. So what you need to do, if you think you have an issue with what you're eating, or what you're eating is making you feel uncomfortable and unhappy, is try an elimination diet, which I think is what Jane's doing. Similar, you're cutting out certain things.
Yeah.
So the ideal way to do it would be to cut out everything that you think is bad. But that doesn't work for a lot of people. That's quite a hard thing to do. So I would say maybe cut out 2 or 3 things. So maybe cut out dairy, maybe cut out gluten, maybe cut out alcohol, or maybe cut out sugar. So maybe do 2 or 3 at a time for 2 to 4 weeks. So for a long period of time. And then keep a diary or keep a note of how you feel. If you don't feel any different, then I can't imagine that those food groups are having an impact on you. But if you do feel different, then you've got some answers there. But it doesn't mean you can't tolerate them at all. It might be that it's the tolerance level that you need to think about. So start to introduce those foods back in one at a time. Because if you put them all back in, you're not going to know what it is. So one at a time, think about, right, I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine. And then be consciously aware of what it's doing. And you'll create your own unique way of eating. You'll know what works and what doesn't work. So the elimination diet is really good. A book to read, I think I've written it on the notes, there's a lady called J.J. Virgin. She's an American lady, but she has a great book called The Virgin Diet. And that's all about an elimination diet. Great book. Highly recommend it. There's lots of recipes and things on there, but she also gives you a plan to what to do. So number 2 is think about the way we eat. Now I'm rubbish at this because I tend to do everything at 100 miles an hour, as probably you already know. Slow down. So slow down how you eat. Put your knife and fork down in between each meal. Don't do what I do and put your mouthful in and already the next one's on its way to my mouth before I've even started to chew it. So chew your food. I think there was some fad a few years ago about chewing your food 60 times or 100 times before you swallow it. That's probably a little bit impractical, but we don't chew it enough. And if we don't chew it enough, all we're doing really is passing on the job of your teeth and your saliva and your mouth to your digestive system. That's not its job. So it's like me saying to Jane, oh, I don't want to teach today, so you can teach today. Instead of you actually doing the class, you're teaching it today. So it's not your job, but you'll do the best you can. That's where your digestive system is like, well, hang on a minute, I'll do my best. But you get big pieces of food, you don't get the nutrients absorbed into your body the correct way, and you start to create issues, diverticulitis, Crohn's disease, that sort of thing. So chew properly, don't talk with your mouth full, don't speak because you're taking in air. Number 3 is our ability to digest our food. So I'm talking here about your digestive fire. And that sort of comes back to what foods you can eat, your tolerance and your intolerance level. But it's thinking about things like if you are having a glass of water with ice before you eat or as you eat, that can have an impact on your digestive fire because the cold will have an impact on how well your body can create the enzymes. So cold drinks are not always the best thing to have. And in fact, I know Nancy says don't have water with your meals because it dilutes the nutrients that you're trying to absorb into your body. So maybe don't have water actually with your meal. Wine is slightly different. Wine can be quite good at digestive enzymes. So, yeah, not that glass of wine. Number 4 is having a healthy gut. So looking after your microbiome, which is the microbes. We have hundreds and hundreds of microbes in our GI tract that actually help us. And they will also help your immune system. So antibiotics are, yes, they are good for us in one way in that they will fight disease, but they're not very good for our digestive system. So if you do have to take a course of antibiotics, have some prebiotics as well. So have a course of prebiotics for at least 2 weeks. So if your antibiotics are for 1 week, have the prebiotics for that 1 week and another 1 week as well. Try and buy the best quality you possibly can. Now, the best quality generally are the ones that are stored in the fridge. So if you go to Boots, you probably won't get brilliant quality. But if you go to Holland & Barrett and also places like, I haven't been in Big Life Organics, but I would imagine they probably do the ones that come and you have to store them in the fridge. That way the bacteria will actually stay alive for a little bit longer. Eating a high vegetable diet, and also adding in some fermented type foods. Now I've written down cider vinegar, pickles, sauerkraut, apples, olives, kefir. I'm not very good at pronouncing that. They're all very good for you to have. Fermented products will actually help you create those microbes in your system. Number 5 is having a good lining for our GI tract. So again, certain drugs, things like aspirin and NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, such as ibuprofen, they can have a big impact on your tummy. So if you've got a heart issue, you're probably on aspirin. So just be aware and conscious that that may have an impact on your digestive system. And number 6 is, of course, balancing your enteric nervous system. And that's the parasympathetic and sympathetic, the limbic system, the whole thing together. Balancing your enteric nervous system by managing your stress. So sleeping well, hydrating well, resting and relaxing. And going back to the 4 M's. Now I'm going to go on to a little bit just about sort of 3 or 4 different types of problems that we have. So hopefully you've sort of finished your lunch. Gas and bloating affects us all from time to time, and you know, some of us are aware of particular foods that create that issue for us. But just some general tips. Don't eat too quickly. Chew your food, and chew your food well. Raw foods sometimes can create more gas and bloating because they're harder for the body to digest, and we have to create more enzymes, which then in turn create more gas. So if you do suffer with gas, bloating, that sort of thing, cook your food. So maybe a salad might not be as good, but you can have a salad where you've got cooked vegetables in there. So you could cook broccoli, you could cook cauliflower, sweet potato, butternut squash, those sort of things. You can have those in salad. Quinoa, the grains, that sort of thing. So, you know, maybe lettuce, tomatoes and things like that aren't as good for you. But again, it's about being aware and listening to your body. Constipation. Now, constipation, most people tend to think more fibre. Got to have more fibre. I'm obviously not eating enough fibre. I'll have some prune juice, or I'll have some cabbage, or I'll just eat more vegetables. Generally, the problem with constipation is that you have a dry system. So if you've already got a dry system and you add more fibre to it, what's going to happen is that fibre is going to absorb any liquid that's there, and it's going to get even more stuffed. So the first thing to do is to think about hydration. Are you drinking enough fluid? And if you're eating lots of vegetables, are you eating the ones that have high water content? So don't always think, oh, I must have more fibre, because sometimes that can actually make it worse. So other tips are drink plenty of fluids. Magnesium glycinate is a supplement that you can get from the health food shop. That can really help with constipation, as can vitamin C. Vitamin C before you go to bed can work quite well for the following morning, but just be a bit careful with it because it can have the opposite effect of making you a bit more regular. So be careful with vitamin C. Other tips are things like having a footstool when you're trying to go to the toilet. Putting your feet up at a different angle will create a better angle for your body anatomically, and it will make it more comfortable for you. And perineal acupressure, which is probably something you don't want to think about while you're having your dinner, it's something else that can help. So it's just stimulating some acupressure points around that area, which will help you go a little bit more. Walking, regular activity. So going back to the 4 M's again, you know, our bodies like movement. The peristalsis in the tummy is happening all the time, but the more you move, the more it's going to move as well. It's almost like getting into a rhythm with your body. IBS seems to be really, really common now, and I think the NHS and doctors themselves lump quite a lot into IBS. There's lots of different symptoms, and it's a bit of a catch-all, but it can be created by dysbiotic gut flora. So again, eating a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables and things like that, that's creating that microbiome, getting the microbes into the body, prebiotics, probiotics, that sort of thing is good. Enteric nervous system problems can have a big impact. So that's why a lot of youngsters, I think, are struggling with IBS, because there's so much pressure, exams. I mean, my daughter's just sat her SATs, and they were the hardest SATs that they've had for years. Reading an article in the paper over the weekend saying that apparently they've got GCSE level questions in for 11-year-olds. And I know that she kept saying to me, Mummy, I don't know what this means. They haven't taught us. So the teachers have been cramming in all these subjects around vocabulary that they didn't know anything about. So all this, this stress. So just relaxing, all of that stuff that we don't tend to do is really, really important. Fermented foods, as I mentioned earlier, really good to have. I'm going to show you a book in a minute as well. Acacia fibre can also help. It's another supplement that you can buy. Probiotics and a natural antimicrobial, which is found in berberine. So that's another supplement that you can get to help. Regular exercise, hydration, and sadly, women are more prone to IBS type symptoms than men because we have a bigger pelvis. So everything sort of is, rather than in men, it tends to be held quite comfortably so the peristalsis can work properly. Because our pelvises are bigger, it sort of flops around a bit. So they haven't necessarily got something to push against. So sadly, women are a bit more prone to IBS. On the fermentation, Nancy Towers, nutritionist, naturopath, is having a fermentation workshop 2 days on the 24th and 25th of June. So if you want to learn how to ferment your own food, go along to that. It'd definitely be worth a go. So just to recap, think about your 4 M's. Movement, mindset. Those are the ones we don't tend to think about. So movement and mindset. Think about how much do you move? How are you feeling? Metabolics, structured exercise, and meals, good nutrition. Clean, home cooked, organic if possible, good produce. And think about what you eat and maybe try the elimination diet if you are struggling with bits and pieces. And then your 6 tips, which I've gone through hopefully in enough detail, written down in your notes, have a look through. Get all of that balanced and hopefully you won't have any issues. Now, a really good book, and I've only read half of it so far, and I bought it recently, Natural Solutions for Digestive Health, will go into so much more detail than I've gone into today. So if you are struggling, really good book to read. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's about £9 or something like that. But that's a really great book. And the JJ Virgin book, Virgin Diet for Elimination Diets, is good. But there's loads of information. Actually, one of the things I didn't touch on was about FODMAP diet for IBS. You ever heard of FODMAP? So it's looking at certain foods, and they have a rating. It's a bit like the low GI and high GI diet. So they've graded all the different types of foods, and you can eliminate certain ones and then bring more of the others in. There's an app, and I think I've put the app on the bottom of the notes as well. So you can download a free app, and it will give you all the FODMAP foods and things like that. You can just Google and search FODMAP as well. So I hope I haven't gone into too much detail. I hope I haven't confused you too much. If you have any questions, then just shout them out.
On the cider vinegar,